Okay. Good morning and welcome to this morning's virtual meeting of the Pension Board. A particularly warm welcome to those members of the public watching online. Anybody online who wishes to follow the agenda from their tablet or smartphone can do so by going to www.kingston.gov.uk and follow the links from your council and then council meeting calendar. This meeting can be found on today's date in the calendar. This meeting is being recorded and the recording will be available on the council's YouTube portal very soon. The recording will be suspended during any adjournments in proceedings and if the committee resolves to consider information as exempt business. This is a meeting held in public rather than a public meeting. And I'm now going to introduce the board members, starting with myself, Robert Ewing, Chairman, and I'm the employer representative. So if I could go to Councillor Davies.
Good morning, I'm Jackie Davies, Councillor for Berrylands, and I'm also an employer representative.
Do we have Alexandra Harris?
Alex Harris is here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, Alex Harris, yeah.
Morning, I'm Alex Harris and I'm an employer representative as well.
Thank you. And Pauline.
Hello, my name's Pauline Lycett Jones and I'm a scheme member representative.
Okay, and we do have apologies from two other members. First of all, Sam Burgess, who's a scheme member representative, and also Raymond Hart, who is a scheme member representative. Can I also now ask the officers to introduce themselves? First of all, Rachel Howard.
Good morning, Rachel Howard, Assistant Director of Finance.
Andrian.
Good morning, everybody. Andrian Mayers, look after pensions for Kingston and Sutton.
Catherine.
Hi, Catherine Gray, Pensions, Finance and Investments Manager for Kingston Pension Fund.
And Tom.
Good morning, my name is Tom Taylor and I'm the team leader of the Employee Liaison Governance team.
Thank you.
We also have Sue Curtin here, Chair.
Sorry, beg your pardon?
We also have Sue Curtin here.
Sue.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. So I'm the Executive Director for Corporate Services in the Council Section 151 Officer and obviously responsible for all the pension funds.
Welcome, Sue.
Thank you.
I'll now move on to the agenda then. So apologies for absence in respect of board members. I've already mentioned it, but Kevin, if you could just repeat the two members who are not here.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Sam Burgess and from Ray Hart.
Okay. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members of the Pension Board are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other registrable or non-registrable interests relevant to items on the agenda. Are there any? Does anybody want to declare anything? No. And any members who arrive late will be asked if they have any interests to declare. We're not expecting any more members to arrive. So I now want to move on to item 3, which is the minutes. And can I sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of March 2024 as a true record? That is affirmed. We will now move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is Pension Administration Performance Update, which is in Appendix A. And I invite, this report provides an update on the key administration activities of the Shared Pensions Administration Service. And I invite Rachel to report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So the report at Appendix A provides an update on Pensions Administration Service performance. And it highlights the performance in benefits processing, where I'm pleased to say the number of outstanding processes has fallen from 1,965 to 1,834 at the time the report was written. So good progress is being made in reducing that backlog. And I can Confirm verbally that the since the report was written, we've had the end of June figures, and this has fallen further to 1,769 outstanding processes, and this is by far the lowest it's been in over a year. So we are making good progress. As set out in paragraph 2, the majority of the backlog processes, paragraph 3, the majority of the backlog processes relate to transfers in or out that accumulated while government factor changes were being implemented, so slightly beyond our control. And we think one of the key factors in bringing that backlog down is we've introduced a new work allocation process to ensure that we can kind of prioritise their high priority cases, but obviously keep an eye on all the ones that are approaching their deadlines, and just do that a bit more systematically to try and continue to focus on bringing that backlog down. They were the key things I wanted to highlight, but obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So if I can start, it's good to see that the backlog is starting to reduce, and I think you just said there that the figure for July is lower than you're reporting in June, and I think that means we're about 200 lower than we were at the same point last year. Am I correct? So that's
in rough terms, yeah.
It's helpful. You've written in the paper some of the sort of underlying reasons why you've had the backlog, and I think we can be encouraged by the fact that it is coming down, albeit gradually, but it is coming down. I did have just a question on Annex A, which is the table that shows aged processes as at 31st of May. And on leavers, you have 44 cases over 12 months. Just wonder if you could just shed a bit of light on why that is.
So normally if processes around leavers are in that kind of category, it's normally where we're waiting for information from other people. Obviously haven't got the specifics of those 44 cases to hand, but there's kind of it can be a number of reasons where for example, some historic dates have come to light as that person's left the scheme. So, you know, maybe the dates don't match up on when we thought they joined the funds to when the employer is saying they joined service. And it can take a bit of time to resolve some of those issues. Sometimes we don't always get as fast an engagement from those employers in resolving some of those discrepancies as we'd like. Yep. So we will continue to have a look at those 44, but it's normally where we're waiting for information or we've got discrepancies in information from third parties.
Okay. Right, and this is a question I've asked before in this committee, but in the appendices, there's something called SLA legal deadline tracker, and as in previous meetings, it's not populated because you don't have the ability to populate it due to a software issue. And my question is, for the members of, or for the board, is there anything that we have to be concerned about with that table not being populated?
No, not that I'm aware of. We kind of maintain what's known as known technically as a breaches of law register. So we're required to kind of report any breaches of legal deadlines and other requirements, and there's nothing to report in that regard. So whilst our system's currently not giving us the facility to report the data in the way we would like in terms of this table, I think the board can be assured that we are complying with our legal requirements.
And I'm sure you're giving your software supplier the necessary notes of dissatisfaction that they can't provide.
Yes, absolutely. The conversations with them are ongoing.
Yeah. Okay, they were the questions.
Alex had her hand up, Chair.
So,
Alex Harris had her hand up.
You answered my question. It was around that legal tracker, just because I know it's been, I think maybe the last year we haven't managed to see that, and I don't know if maybe there's a different way we can present it if we aren't going to get kind of that issue fixed by the software provider soon. Maybe just a sentence saying, we have done the checks, there is nothing to concern instead.
Yeah, absolutely, and we will take that away in terms of reporting for next times. It's probably not the most helpful thing to have a table that's empty of data, and we can think of a better way of kind of reporting what we can within the limitations we've got within the system.
Yeah. Are there any other questions from members? Yes. Kevin, are there any hands?
Councillor Davies' hand is up.
Councillor Davies.
This is one that's been asked before as well. Are you well enough staffed at the moment to catch up with all those cases, or is that still a problem?
So we have had some vacancies. Got two senior pensions officer vacancies that are out to recruit at the moment. So we are hoping to fill those, and we do have a gap at the head of service at the moment as well, which we are trying to fill actively. So we're probably not quite where we'd like. We have had some sickness within the team as well, but the team that are there and working are doing a good job. And I think that new method of work allocation is really helping and enabling us to focus on getting the key priority tasks done. Hopefully the recruitment that's underway will be successful, and within the next few months we will have the right number of people in posts to take that forward. But as with most areas of the council, to be honest, recruitment and retention of staff is an ongoing challenge. So and particularly getting people with the right level of knowledge and experience of pensions administration, it can be tricky. There isn't a huge field of people out there with that necessary skills and experience, but we are doing our best to recruit as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No. In which case, the board is asked to note the update. We'll now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is Pension Administration Project Update, Appendix B. This report provides an update on the key projects of the Shared Pensions Administration Service. And once again, Rachel, if you could introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So as you say, the item 5 report at Appendix B provides an update on the key projects within the pensions admin team. One of the key areas of focus over the past few months has been the annual return. So all the employers in the funds are required to submit their annual return data, and they were due by the 10th of May. We had 51 out of 58 of those by the deadline, and I think 56 at the time of writing. So making good progress, but we're still a couple of outstanding at the time we wrote the report. The annual pensions increase was applied to pensions payable effective from April this year, and work is ongoing on the pensions dashboard, which will be required to have in place by the 31st of October next year, 2025. McLeod remedy is in place, and we're compliant with that new legislation, so that's good news. And then looking forward, the team's really going to be focused on annual benefits statements, so they need to be with scheme members by the 31st of August. And of course, we are approaching yet again a triennial valuation, so we'll be doing some early preparation in preparation for that, for next year's valuation, particularly on the back of getting all those employers' year-end returns in and data cleansing, etc., to get that data fit for the valuation. So the key points I was going to highlight. Again, happy to take questions.
Thank you. It wasn't a question, it's just an observation that we have 58 scheme members, and that's always a bit of a surprise. So Rachel, could you just briefly describe why that is?
Yeah, absolutely. The number of employers within the fund increased substantially over the past probably 10 years or so with the rise of the academisation of schools. So as local authority schools became academies, they get admitted into the pension fund as employers in their own right rather than being part of the council. So that certainly increased the number. And then equally, some of those schools then have contracted out services. So where the staff are transferred out of the school's employment into the employment, for example, of a catering provider, those employers then become admitted to the fund as well. So yeah, the number of employers within the fund has certainly grown compared to where it was back in the day, when it would have been probably the council and the university is by far the most significant employers. We've obviously got Achieving for Children as well within the Kingston fund, but the biggest number of those employers are schools and their service providers.
And of course, that plays into some of the backlogs that you talk about on those on the earlier paper, where you've got sort of small organisations. They're going to find it more difficult to respond to you, to get the, they might not have the right systems to provide the information that you need. And for the outsourcing, obviously when that happens, because we had that at the university as well, there'll be a point in time where there aren't any members left in the outsource, so that will then, if you like, close down as a member. But 58 is I can't remember what it was when I first. It was about 20 members, I'm sure, when I first joined. First started looking at this scheme, but that.
Yeah, it has increased substantially, and you're right. It's a number of those smaller employers in the fund. They tend to use outsourced payroll providers,
yep.
But it does mean they don't necessarily have a lot of in-house expertise, and we're kind of working with people for whom it's a very small part of their job to deal with the pension funds, and then working with their outsourced payroll providers and others as well to try and get that information through.
I don't suppose there's a lot of influence that you can bring to reduce that number, because you're effectively, I mean, a lot of those things are kind of statutory members, aren't they? So, like the academy schools, for example.
Yes, and I mean, it wouldn't be a kind of what's the word? A kind of position of the fund that we're trying to reduce the number of employees in the fund. It obviously does create extra administration, but we are kind of, it's happened gradually. It's not happened overnight, and we've kind of grown and changed the way the team works to be able to respond to that. So yeah, it's been that way for a little while, but as you say, it's not how it used to be.
No. I suppose in year dot it was 2, wasn't it? As the university in RBK. Anyway, are there
Pauline's hand is up.
Sorry, who?
Pauline.
Pauline. For some reason I can't see her hand, so I'm so sorry. Pauline.
Okay, thank you. It relates to paragraph 4, the McLeod remedy. Which October the 1st do we now get the retirement calculations from? Was it 2023 or 2024? I just wasn't clear about what it related to.
Apologies, I think it's 2023. Tom's nodding at me, so yes.
Right.
2023.
And the second one is, when would it be, relating to that, when would it be reasonable to expect you to give a full project update, which you've said is in a future board meeting? Would it be the next or a year from now? Just an indication of what's likely.
I probably need to take that away. It's probably not for the next meeting. We probably need to look again at the software provision and how we can make that work. But we can be more precise. If we don't bring it to the next meeting, we can give a more precise timeline as to when we can do that more fully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Are there any more hands?
There are none, but Chair, if I could just be of assistance, if you click on the 3 dots, it might help you on the bottom next to the off button, and you click change layout and make it tiled, it will help you. Then you'll be able to see everybody in the meeting.
I can see everybody in the meeting, but I can't see when they're putting their hand up.
When the white hands come up underneath their names. Right. As there's mine at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Indeed so. Okay. Thank you. Having now learnt how to do that, it doesn't look as though there are any more hands. So the board is asked to note the update, and we now move on to agenda item 6, which is the governance and risk update, Appendix C. This report provides an update on the key governance activities and reviews the fund's risk register. And Rachel, you're on again.
I am, sorry. Thank you, Chair. So the report Appendix C provides an update on the key governance issues and fund risk register. You can see in paragraph 3 the revisions that have been done to the risk register since the last report. And whilst there's some changes in the scoring, there's no overall changes in the RAG status of any of the risks within the risk register for this period. The only other key thing I really wanted to mention was around the risk that was added at the last update to the board and to the panel as well, which is around ill health retirement and the pension strain costs associated with that. So we've been working with the fund's actuaries to explore other options to fund this strain cost, with the intention being that it would revert to this being picked up by the fund, or more accurately through employers' contribution rates, rather than as a direct cost at the point that ill health retirement is granted. So we've had a further update from the actuary, and we've got some proposed wording that would amend the funding strategy statement to enact that change. That would need to be approved by the pension fund panel, and then consulted with the scheme employers. But from all conversations with scheme employers to date, we believe that employers would all be supportive of that change. We do just need to make sure that employers are aware of the risk in terms of future contribution rates could be impacted by it kind of being picked up at the cost of those ill health retirements being picked up through contributions rates rather than through the fund. But the position of the fund is strong in terms of the fund performance, which we'll come on to later in the agenda. So we believe it's manageable through that route, but that will come through to the next annual meeting for decision in the autumn. And that's all I wanted to say, but yeah, again, happy to take questions.
Okay. You actually answered the question that I would have asked on the strain costs due to ill health, so thank you for that explanation. Councillor Davies.
Yes, my question really is about cybersecurity, because I am so anxious about what can happen to a health system or anything else when attackers attack. You seem very confident in your systems. How do we know that you're right to be confident? And that sounds like a rude question, I'm sorry, but how are you so confident?
So there's always an element of risk there, and we need to be realistic about that. I suppose there's a number of different avenues to it. So there's the things that we control within the council's environment as administrators, that are subject to the same cybersecurity checks and processes as any other kind of council department and system. But equally, all of the kind of fund managers, software providers and the like that we work with will have their own arrangements in place as well. Internally, we have some really proactive monitoring and management of our cyber risk threats. But it's always, I can't sit here and say I'm 100% confident, because there will always be a new threat, and no matter what kind of processes we put in place, there will always be something new that comes along. But I think I'm confident that we're doing everything we can that's reasonable within that space to provide ourselves assurance, and that certainly our regulated providers that we work with in terms of the fund managers and the like will have their own policies and processes in place to manage that risk as well. But you're absolutely right that it is a key risk that we need to continue to monitor and manage.
Thank you. I suppose as long as you're doing backups and you've got systems in place for if the worst happens, that's probably all you can do, really, isn't it? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. Just remind me, Rachel, the sort of back office systems that we're talking about, because I always have to remind myself, is it the London Borough of Sutton's systems that we're actually talking about here, or is it RBK?
So the pensions admin Sutton, but our IT provision is shared across both councils as well. So it's a joint enterprise in terms of the systems that were within the council's control, and we follow, as the IT department is shared, we follow the same systems and processes across both Kingston and Sutton.
This might be a stupid question, but are they the same systems?
Yes, largely. I mean, yes, in terms of the things within the remit of this board, then yes, they are absolutely the same systems. We have one shared pensions administration that serves both funds.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No, I can't see any other questions. So the board is asked to note the update. We now move on to item 7 on the agenda. This is the pension fund panel update, investment strategy and performance, which is Appendix D. And this report summarises the investments related papers presented by the Royal Borough of Kingston upon Thames as at June 2024. And I invite Catherine to summarise.
Thank you. So this report covers 3 main areas: the investment performance, the funding level and cash flow, and the update from the London CIV. So the investment performance has been pretty strong, returning 5.6% over the quarter, bringing the total assets of the fund to a nice round £1.225 billion. 1 year performance also very strong, and in fact the local authority perk universe results have just been published, and Kingston placed 8th out of the 63 other local authority pension funds in that universe over 1 year, and 3rd over 5 years. So that is pleasing to see. That's largely been driven by the strong equity performance most recently, albeit that over the 3-year period during COVID and coming out of COVID, the equity performance was below the benchmark. Particularly the Schroders fund, which we've now sold out of and moved into the Elgin passive equity investment. The funding level has improved considerably since the last actuarial valuation, now standing at 150%. If you look at graph 2, you can see how the funding level has changed since the last actuarial valuation as at March 2022. Largely been driven by the the liabilities shown by the pink line, which have reduced substantially. Also, the green line shows the asset values, which have steadily increased over the period. The London CIV have achieved their target of bringing an additional £1.6 billion onto the platform, and that increased scale has allowed us to negotiate further fee savings, which are shown in the table in section 21 of the report, which we're expecting to bring further savings of around £182,000 per annum. That's about all I wanted to highlight on the report. Very happy to take your questions.
Okay. I'll just you answered one. I did note that the 3-year, so the 1 year performance is ahead of benchmark, the 3-year is under benchmark, and the 5-year, I got that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Again, ahead of benchmark, and I think you've kind of answered it in your introduction there, that it was to do with certain fund managers not performing as well as you wished, particularly Schroders. I also note the 150% surplus, which is Obviously very good news. And just a question on what you just said about the London Civ, paragraph 20, says that they've achieved their annual target for the fiscal year March 24 and brought 1.6 billion of pool investments into the pool. Can you just explain what that means?
So of all the 32 London boroughs that form part of the London Civ, collectively, all of the London boroughs have increased their investment with the Civ by £1.6 billion. So moving assets from outside of the pool into the pool management.
And that enables the fee to be reduced.
Yeah, the greater scale allows for reduced fees.
Okay, that's fine. So, do you all have any questions?
Pauline?
Pauline.
Thanks. I readily admit to pedantry. I'm presuming that outperformance is by 1 percentage point as opposed to 1%. Would that be right?
You just froze just in the middle of.
Oh, right. Paragraph 3 indicates an outperformance of the benchmark by 1%. And I'm suggesting that the pedantry in me suggests that's 1 percentage point, because 1% is something much smaller.
Yes, 1 percentage point. So the benchmark was to return 4.6%, and we've returned 5.6%. So
I'm suggesting
an additional 1% return, not 1% of the total. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's all. They're two different things, and this is a financial and statistical account. Yeah. So that's all. I now retire again.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? No, I can't see any other questions. So the board is asked to note the report. The next item is agenda item 8, which is the work programme update, Appendix E. This report sets out the proposed programme of work for the pension board meetings for 24-25 financial year. And Catherine, if you could summarise.
Thank you. So this report sets out the plan for the forthcoming year, and also listed on there are the training modules to be completed each quarter. And the only other thing I really wanted to remind members of the board is we have our responsible investment training session on the 10th of September at 10 AM. So looking forward to meeting you all there.
Okay. So, excuse me. So in terms of the training, the training that we do online and the modules, I find that pretty useful. And I think members of the panel members do it as well as board members, I believe. Are we all up to date with that?
John,
if I can come in, so Tom and I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, and when I think when we looked at it, the board members were largely all performing well at doing the training. 1 or 2 members of the panel need a little bit of reminding, which we will take forward, but largely most people are doing the training that they should be.
I mean, not there's any contest between the board and the panel, but so the board is out doing the panel, so that's good. But they are actually quite useful modules, and it's a very efficient way of actually conducting training as well. Okay, Pauline.
Thanks very much. I wasn't going to say this, but Tom did save me. So he sent me the information about the training we meant to do before this event. And the thing that struck me about it was that it seemed as though the actual module appeared to be in need of update, at least for somebody like me who is not necessarily on top of what pension legislation has happened in the interim, because I think it could only refer up to 2020, and I don't know whether there have been any changes since then. but I was looking for a little bit at the bottom of the module which tells me the date at which it either began, you know, when it was created and when it's going to be reviewed. And I would just suggest that maybe that would be something which we could ask them to do, which is just to look at them and just to give us a notion of when those modules were likely to be updated, because, you know, I rely on the modules for my knowledge. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's really helpful feedback. We can take that on board and feed that back to the provider. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Any other questions?
Just a comment on the training, really. It's all just a little bit passive and lecture based, and I'm just wondering if there could be a little bit more interaction. The fact that you can pass a quiz with 0%, I think, is a little bit anxious making. And so, although you find it useful, I am not entirely sure that it really works for me. I've done it, but I can't say that I've retained a lot of it, really.
Okay.
To be very honest.
Thanks for that feedback. And yeah, I guess different people learn in different ways, don't they? We need to take that on board. So as Catherine mentioned, we've got the responsible investment training events that will be happening in September, which will take a different format. So that will be kind of in-person training rather than you sitting there doing things online. And I suppose we're trying to kind of balance those different types of activity in different ways on different issues. So but yeah, we will take that feedback on board and recognise that, you know, it doesn't work for everyone in the same way.
I think if there was just a script that went with the talks, I was looking at the environment one again this morning, because that's very close to my heart, and after about a minute and a half, I'm afraid I'd just about lost it, really. So I probably would read something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's conducted by, generally speaking, it's actuaries, isn't it, who are doing the talking. So it is, well, can be a bit dry. I certainly admit that.
Sorry.
But
Pauline's hand is up.
Just on that point, I think that they do they do have transcripts and also the you know, the slides, but they're kind of hidden underneath. You know, you have to scroll down and then you have to upload them. So I looked for exactly the same thing. You know, I'm not saying this is the best form of being able to understand something, because they pack a whole lot of stuff in. But I was pleased to find if you scroll down under the screen, you can link into all sorts of stuff which will take up your time.
Thank you very much. I'll have another look. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so a bit of feedback there on the training. So, right. Any other questions? No. So the board is asked to note the work programme. That takes us on to agenda item 9, which is urgent items authorised by the chair. There are no urgent authorised. Now, there are no urgent items authorised by the chair. And so I'm just going to ask if there is any other business. Is there any other members want to raise anything? Because I've just got one item of other business. No? So, Andrian, is this your last? I believe this could be your last board meeting.
Yes, Robert.
So what I'd like to do on behalf of the board is to thank you for your work and the very clear papers that you have been providing for us to enable us to monitor the scheme, and also the excellent performance that the fund has enjoyed in recent years. I think you quoted a figure earlier of we're in the top 10, if you like, of councils or local government councils in London on investment performance, and that's absolutely fantastic, and it contributes to the fact that we're 100%, 150% funded as a scheme. So I understand that you're moving on to the London Civ. So first of all, thank you very much for everything you've done in helping us, and we wish you the best of luck in your new job.
Thank you, Robert. I had this philosophy that as officers we advise, and members of the panel and the board decide. But at the end of the day, without a good team behind you, the papers, the reports, the training, and indeed the outcome in terms of performance or funding would not be possible. But thank you and all members of the board for having me during my time over here. Still be in contact with Kingston in one way or the other. Thank you all.
We've been negotiating fees with you, I think.
To the other side, yes.
Okay, well, they can definitely come down, can't they? So, so that is it. And I close the meeting at 10:42. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye. Thank you.
Hi, Kevin. You're on mute.